What's up, everybody? This is Colin from Holistic Heritage Homestead. I hope you're all well. It's Monday, meat day. As promised, we're going to start doing more cooking videos where we show you either step-by-step instructions, or we just go over some recipes, or it's just some tips and tricks. It's going to be a lot of videos we're going to put out about cooking because we cook all day, every day. In front of us, we have some beautiful lamb loin chops, they're great. They're like little mini lamb porterhouses, right? And we have also the bone-in cowboy steak. Everything we talk about today is going to be about grilling, but everything that we talk about transfers over easily to in the kitchen, pan searing and broiling as well. So same principles, same things apply, just a different cooking technique, right? So why cooking? Because cooking matters. Cooking is a lost skill set nowadays that a lot of people, they don't know how to cook. And it's sad. It's so sad because cooking is not a gender role. Cooking is a skill set that every adult should have. It's important. In the homestead, around the homestead, if you produce your own vegetables, your own produce, great. You produce your own meat, your own proteins, great. What do you do with it then? How do you disguise repetition? How do you take the same piece of poultry or steak or lamb and turn it into something different every time so you don't get bored with your food, right? Food, water, shelter, the basics of life. Food is life. If you're not eating well or eating quality foods, healthy foods, every facet of your life, every aspect of your life will be negatively affected. Food is your fuel. If you are a high-performance machine, you require high-performance fuel. Whenever possible, we prefer grass-fed meat. Whenever possible, we prefer organic food. Whenever possible, we prefer organic and non-GMO food. Why? Because we believe in investing in ourselves. We believe in investing in ourselves. And you have to take care of yourselves, especially if you're working hard and you're stressed and going through life like most people are. You have to feed yourselves well. Now, you're thinking, Colin, you're always talking about saving money and being thrifty. Yeah, I am. And that is not mutually exclusive of eating well. As a matter of fact, when you cook your own food, you save money. Because these lamb loin chops and these cowboy steaks in a restaurant would be 3, 4, 5 times more expensive. Simply to have somebody else cook it, and quite frankly, in this household, they're not even going to cook it usually as well as we can cook it, right? I would say we don't always eat like this every day, but you know what? Kind of do. We kind of do. Because at the center of every meal for us, and I've touched base on diet and nutrition in the past a little bit, at the center of every meal should be a high-quality animal protein and fat. Everything else after that is extra credit. Good quality vegetables. If you want some grains, do that, to each their own, right? But you need high-quality animal food. You need good protein. You're made up of protein. You need protein. So we got this stuff on sale. That's one way you can save money. You can also save money by buying in bulk, obviously, right? We happen to be cooking some extra meat because on Monday meat day, we tend to meal prep for the week because we're so busy during the week. We just want to make sure we have some extra stuff already cooked and already ready for the times we're too busy, right? And folks, we got these steaks, these huge, very thick steaks for about maybe $20 a piece, right? That could feed 1.5 to 2.5 people, depending upon how much you eat and your appetite, obviously, with ease. That's more affordable than fast food, which is garbage. You don't have money for good quality meat? You don't? But you go to Starbucks every day, buy yourself coffee every day, garbage snacks every day, spend money on sports. Folks, your family deserves better. You deserve better. Feed yourselves high quality foods. Learn how to cook, learn how to get it done in your kitchen, bring the restaurant to your house, the restaurant to your kitchen, be the restaurant, right? I always talk about this. So, I'm going to get right into it. I'm just want to say, folks, I've been so blessed. I've worked over the years in the restaurant industry for over 2 decades now, well over 2 decades, and I was blessed to work with some world-class chefs, all different types of chefs, every ethnic group, all over from all over the world. And these men and women are incredible. And I've learned so much because in true Colin fashion, what did I do? I asked a million questions. I observed. I would experiment with the things that they taught me, see what worked and what didn't work. But you have to be open-minded to cook, folks. It's part of the game too, right? So, lamb. My family loves lamb. It's a good way, to get other red meat in your system besides beef, right? Venison is great. There's a lot of different types of meat you should be eating, each one with their own nutritional profiles and things that they offer you, vitamins and minerals, right? Compounds, healthy fats. So this dry rub is something that I do almost every time, but you can do other things, obviously. But I'm telling you, if you try this dry rub right here on lamb, it will blow you away. Blow you away. This is something I've experimented with many times, and I cook it either this way or one other way for the most part, and this applies to any cut of lamb. So the first thing you do with any meat, whether you're doing a marinade or a dry rub, is you salt your meat. Salt enhances, concentrates, and amplifies flavor. If you're not cooking with salt, you're not cooking, and your food is probably horrible, right? Why would I add salt even before I do a marinade? Well, a marinade, you could kind of think of it as a brine, right? Salt, maybe a little sugar, right, is really good. I added a little sugar to this as well, like brown sugar, because the molasses component, right? The salt is going to pull out the moisture from in the meat, mix with your seasoning, your dry rub, or your marinade, and then go back into the meat, migrate back into the meat, infuse the meat with all of those wonderful flavors, right? This is my dry rub that I was apprehensive or reluctant to share because it's my thing, right? But what's any good idea or any knowledge if it's not shared? It's not worth anything, right? Always start off with the quality salts. If you're grilling, you could use coarse grain, kosher salt, all that stuff, and it gives a nice crust, sure. We prefer either Redmond real salt or Celtic sea salt. Celtic sea salt is a wet salt, because it's actually literally it's moist a little bit. But the Redmond real salt, they're both equally delicious. The Celtic salt is a larger grain. It's really good for grilling. However, the Redmond sea salt is more useful for different types of things, right? And Redmond sea salt is so nutritious. It has all the trace minerals and in there. It's actually something they use for livestock, for animals, for a mineral supplement. Salt has been demonized by ignorant people and pseudo doctors for a long time. If you have a problem with salt, then don't have too much salt. But the body needs salt. And if you're not using a high quality salt, you're probably lacking in a lot of those trace minerals that good quality salt has. Redmond sea salt or Celtic sea salt is the way to go. First and foremost on anything. Why do I also put it down first? Because you want as much salt to be touching as much surface area and in direct contact with as much of the meat as possible. Because it's the most important thing, and it's what it creates, that osmotic gradient to pull and push that water in and out of the meats. Second thing we usually do is black pepper. Most things we add black pepper. We love black pepper, right? So this dry rub, from start to finish, is Redmond or Celtic, salt, black pepper, turmeric, paprika, and cumin and garlic powder, right? Essentially, I'm creating my own adobo seasoning without the oregano. Another fun recipe would be to go more herb heavy and do thyme and oregano, marjoram, basil, all that stuff. Rosemary, that piney, citrus, earthy, aromatic stuff is excellent, excellent with lamb. And being that this is a roast, that's also a very good dry rub. You know, a roast because it's thick, right? You could bake this if you wanted to. It's that thick. We're not going to roast it, but herbs like that also work very good for thick cuts of meat or roasts, right? That's it. Salt, black pepper. We use fresh cracked from a pepper mill. Black pepper, garlic, cumin, paprika, turmeric. Why turmeric? Here's a little tip for you. Lamb, we don't ever marinate our lamb. Could you? Absolutely. We don't. Why? Because we're kind of purists. A lot of the times we'll honestly just use salt and pepper, maybe a little garlic powder on our meat because we want the meat to come through with the natural flavors. But all we're trying to do with it is enhance the natural flavor. So turmeric in particular is one of the ingredients of mustard. Mustard is really good, especially on leg of lamb or if you're using a wet rub. Mustard is called for in a lot of recipes with lamb, with venison, right? One of the main ingredients of mustard is turmeric. Turmeric complements that funkiness, that gaminess of the meat, and also helps kind of tone it down at the same time. It's really incredible what turmeric does. If you're not using turmeric in your lamb or your venison, you gotta do it, folks. You gotta do it. Paprika. You could use a smoked paprika, which we kind of prefer, but we tend to save that for things that really need the smokiness. It's not needed here, but we also try to use different ingredients that they use in the cultures that eat a lot of lamb. Northwestern Europe, the Middle East, Southern Asia, places like that. What ingredients do they use? Cumin is one of my favorite things to use on meat rubs because it just imparts a very unique, intense, aromatic flavor. And again, if you want to make it simple, use some adobo and call it a day. But we don't think that the oregano is needed here, and we like a little more turmeric than that. And the paprika is definitely a must, right? So that's our dry rub. Okay, over here with the bone-in cowboys, we did a marinade. We don't always marinate our meats, but it's a good way to add some extra flavor. Now, people that say you need to marinate overnight or at least one day or more days, that's not true. That is absolutely not true. Yes, it might infuse more flavor, but maybe I don't want that much flavor. Maybe I want just a little bit, right? Or maybe you're like most people and you don't have time or the foresight to always think days ahead, right? I'm telling you right now, sometimes we will marinate things for only 20, 30 minutes. And it absolutely imparts and infuses the flavor into the meat. This has been going a little over 3 hours, probably about 4 hours now, because it's a thicker cut, needs a little more time. Now, I'm gonna tell you what's in this marinade, and you might think it's a little weird, but marinades are all about food chemistry and food science, right? Different acids, different bitters, different sweets, how to use a brine. That's what comes into play here. So another little pro tip, use whatever you have in your fridge or your pantry. That's gonna go bad. If you haven't seen my wife Nicole's video about pantry prep, it's a great video. Definitely check that video out. A way to cycle through your things besides certain dishes like stir fries and soups and stews rather, is to utilize whatever you've got that's almost expiring, whatever's left over, to move through your stuff. I like to use some vinegar and or acids or fresh fruit juice and alcohol, whether it's a wine or a beer, because that's the catalyst to help push everything into the flesh itself. So we use whatever's left over. What we almost always use in every red meat marinade, personally, is Worcestershire. Some people call it Worcestershire, whatever you call it. The original Worcestershire sauce. You can get some cheap dollar store stuff if you want, whatever. We almost always use that because we love the flavor. I am a huge fan of A1 sauce. Yeah, A1 sauce. The popular sauce, right? You don't have to always be trendy and cool. You don't have to always reinvent the wheel. A1 has been around. It's very popular for a reason. It's a very complex, nuanced ingredient list. Read the ingredients in A1 and it will just make sense. It is delicious to me. However, my wife doesn't like it as much. But when mixed with other things in a marinade, it really shines. It really does shine. Before I put the marinade, I did salt, pepper, a little bit of garlic powder, and a little bit of light brown sugar to mimic like kind of a barbecue sauce and add a sweetness to it. Salt, sugar, water, that's pretty much a brine. So what I'm doing is I'm just coating the outside and then I'm adding the marinade, which I'll get into in a minute. This marinade will be completely wiped dry off of the meat very soon. And then I will do a dry rub of a good amount of salt, black pepper, might throw a little garlic powder, maybe a little chili powder if I want to go for more of a blackened or slightly warmer flavor. I'm probably gonna do salt, pepper, and black powder. Salt, pepper, and maybe a little chili powder on this, or paprika probably. I'm gonna keep the other stuff very light, mostly salt and pepper, because the marinade already did the job of infusing the flavor. I'm gonna do that completely dry because I don't want a wet mess on the grill. You wanna get a nice sear. Make sure you're getting all of your meat seasoned at least 20 minutes or 30 minutes before you cook it to get the flavoring into the meat. You also don't want to be cooking cold meat. You want your meat to be at least room temperature, okay? When you're searing, whether you are pan searing or on the grill, you want high heat. If you are pan searing, do yourself a favor and do not use a vegetable oil or an olive oil. Use either the same type of fat or lard or tallow that you are cooking. So you have beef tallow for beef, do that, or pork, use lard, or just use any animal fat because it has the better smoking point that will match animal flesh. Olive oil, too high heat might not work as well. There, different ideas and opinions on that, right? But we don't want vegetable oil on our meat. We want animal fat on our meat, and it will enhance the flavor. We're going to be putting this on the grill and searing on the grill, so we're not going to pan sear this first. But again, if you're pan searing, put it in the broiler. Put it in the broiler setting on your oven. If you're doing a roast or you're braising, obviously you could bake slow and low or whatever. But most of the time you want meat to be cooked quickly, okay? Quickly, especially with something like this, you're doing a dry rub afterwards to enhance what's called the Maillard reaction, that natural char and caramelization process that happens, right? That coveted steakhouse char, you want a high heat. You can do the trendy now reverse searing on thick cuts of meat, which I'll explain, but we like a traditional technique on this. So what you do when you have a thick cut of meat like this, like a giant tomahawk or something like that, is we're using a charcoal grill. Whatever grill you're using or however you're doing it, you want one side or one setting to be very hot, and another side to have little to no charcoal or a low setting. We prefer to sear it. The whole point of searing is to lock in moisture and flavor so it doesn't bleed out, right? That's why I don't personally understand the idea of kind of baking it low and slow and then at the very end putting it on that super high heat to sear it in, because you're already losing moisture at that point, I feel. So we sear it off the bat, super high heat. We put all the coals on one side mostly. Super high heat, sear it up all sides, not the top and the bottom, every side, especially with nice fat caps. Sear every side of your meat, even on your loin chops, right? Once you sear every side, a thick cut of meat like this, probably at least 2 minutes a side at least, right? Then I will move it to the lower temperature, low to no coals part of my grill, or if you can put on a low temperature setting on your grill, and then you do a little bit of slow and low, however you want your temperature. It could be 20 minutes, it could be whatever, right? We prefer, for most meat, a medium rare temperature. Sometimes if it's a very fatty meat or a well marbled meat, we might go up to medium. You do whatever you like, right? Why would I go to medium? Well, You want to break down and render and soften all of that fat, especially if you have a lot of fat cap on your meat. And you're not really going to do that unless you kind of go between a medium rare to a medium. We don't ever go to a medium well, really, unless it's kind of an accident. But yeah, if it's just well-seasoned, piece of meat and it's a good cut of meat, medium well will still be delicious. Absolutely. We almost never, ever, ever go well done. We think that's kind of sad. We don't like doing that because it's not a matter of opinion. It is a fact that it does lose moisture and you're drying out your meat. So if you want a moist piece of meat, maximum medium well, preferably a medium rare. A medium is still acceptable. In rare occasions, like a intramuscular fat pattern or a well-marbled lean piece of meat like a filet mignon, I might even go down to a rare. And here's the thing, folks. If you find yourself constantly overcooking your meat, perhaps you're not considering carryover cooking. Carryover cooking is the fact that anytime you're cooking meat, whether it's the oven or the grill, it's going to continue cooking once you take it off of the heat source for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, or if it's a really thick cut or a roast, maybe even longer. So we're doing a medium rare where red meat is usually about 130 to 135 is where we want to be at the end, right? Again, I'm starting with room temperature meat, not cold meat, right? When I get to the 5 degrees before my desired temperature, then I pull it off. So if I want to be 135, I'm pulling it off at 125 to 130, getting myself 5 to 10 degrees buffer, right? If I pull this off at 135, it's going to start to enter the world of medium, which is okay because a soft or a light medium is still acceptable to us. But if I want to stay there, you have to pull it off beforehand. Keep in mind, a thicker cut of meat is more impacted by carryover cooking. So a thick cut like this, I'm going to pull it off between 5 and probably closer to 10 degrees early. Always let your meat rest. Never take a piece of meat off the grill or off your broiler and cut into it right away. That's horrible. Why? Flesh, meat are just muscle bellies. They're just muscles. So like a contracted muscle, when it's cooked, it tightens. Once you let it rest, it relaxes the muscles and it starts to put the juice back into the center and evenly disperse the natural meat juices, the fluids in there back into the muscle bellies. So you need to let it relax again to let that carryover cooking take place and to keep it tender and soft. And if you cut into a steak right away, all of the juices from the meat are gonna come right out onto your plate. You don't want that. You want it to stay in the meat. You're just gonna bleed it out and dry it out. Don't do that. Back to the marinade. Use whatever you've got. We always start with Worcestershire. I used a little A1 after I did a little light seasoning dry rub just to help push the flavors in and out of the meat. That's the only reason I do that, right? Because all the salt that's excess on here is gonna get wiped off and I'm gonna use new fresh salt as the dry rub. I used ketchup. Why? Ketchup. Oh no, Colin, you had me until you said ketchup. Well, ketchup's popular for a reason. Ketchup has tomato, right? Which is a great flavoring agent. We use tomato paste in a lot of things here for soups and stews and pastas and marinades because it's kind of bitter, it's kind of sweet, and it has vinegar in it already, the ketchup, right? So that's gonna help infuse the flavors, carry those flavors into the meat, right? It also has sugar. We used a little bit of light brown sugar on this as well. I'm gonna do a little more to really sweeten this up at the end. You don't need sugar, but sugar is kind of a little fun trick. A little bit, folks. Just like a little sugar in the pasta sauce. Balance the acidity, right? Right? I also used, in this one, some beer. You could use liquor or high-proof liquor. You could use wine. Beer, alcohol, helps it also carry into the flesh. It helps take all those ingredients and push it into the flesh while adding a little bit of hoppiness and a little bit of bitterness to it, right? Very simple. I also had a little bit of cocktail sauce, which is essentially tomato and horseradish. A little bit of cocktail sauce that I was trying to use up before it went bad in this as well. And if you know anything about old school steakhouses or old way to eat steak, is some people actually use horseradish or horseradish sauce because it really helps break down the flavors more, right? Simple. Sometimes I might use citrus. Sometimes I use red wine. I use whatever I've got. Always starting personally with Worcestershire and or A1. And just adding on and having fun with it. Barbecue sauce is another good thing because it already has sugar and tomato paste in it, right? Read your ingredients. Understand the food science. Understand your acids and how they interact with food and proteins, how they denature proteins and help pre-prep it to cook. Try something like this, okay? When you're done, this goes directly on. I put this on after because it's a smaller piece of meat. I'm gonna get these big boys going first. And then when the heat is a little bit lower, I'll put the lamb on. These are gonna cook very quick though, folks, right? Give it a shot. We're gonna pair this with a little steakhouse style cream spinach, maybe some steakhouse mushrooms, maybe a little corn crab soup with some leftover crab we had. Okay, eating well, very affordably, cheaper than fast food, high quality food. These are just some tips to introduce to you the basics of handling meat and what you should be doing, folks. All right, the rest is up to your personal flavor, whatever you like, your style, whatever you prefer. But you can't go wrong with this, truly. Impress your loved ones, impress your date, impress your family, impress your company with simple, approachable cooking techniques. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. So as far as a pairing for wine, Cabernet is king, especially with steak, right? You want something that's astringent and dry enough to cut through that fat, that marbled fat. But you could also use something that's jammy and fruit forward, not necessarily sweet, but something that's fruity, but maybe even dry, like a red Zinfandel or a nice Malbec would be great with this. If you want to go with the lamb, something lighter, even a Pinot Noir, I would stick with reds personally, but you do whatever you like. All right, take care. Happy cooking, happy grilling. It's Monday meat day. Be well, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you try this dry rub and how it works out for you for the lamb. Try a marinade similar to this for steaks. And try the different tips and tricks I told you about the room temperature steak, starting with that, room temperature meats, and seasoning beforehand, how you could flash marinade very quickly, searing all sides, how to let your meat rest, and how to take care of carryover cooking. Let me know how you apply these things and how it works for you. I hope you're all well. Thanks again. Like, comment, subscribe, and give us some feedback. Take care.